didn't change my mind.
This will be available on our YouTube channel in a few days.
Okay.
If you can, just if you are muting, if you feel
Okay.
like answering your question, by all means, go at any point in time. So I'll start with this. We do have an agenda tonight, so a bit of a schedule, but at any point in time, if you got a question, ask away. No question is a silly question, except the unanswered questions, unasked questions. So we as a vendor group are here with our hearts and our minds and our best case scenario knowledge to answer any of your questions to our best ability. Because again, with all the regulations, there's a little bit of vagueness. So we're just doing the best we can and hopefully give you the answers in an appropriate way that you feel at the end of this conversation that you're nice and calm and you have a better understanding of how you can approach your wedding and your planning. So having said that, we will take a few minutes to review. We did a call last month, so we're not going to belabor that too much, but we're going to take about 15 minutes and talk about numbers, ceremonies, receptions, venues, private versus public, and then we're going to talk about some food, and then we're going to take another section and we're going to talk about entertainment and how to entertain your crowd and what kind of a crowd experience you can have, games, etc. And then we're going to go around the room and the vendors are going to kind of give their perspective as far as their approach from their particular, way they clothing, etc., makeup. And there's Rosemary. And then we are going to do a bit of a round table with the vendors, just to kind of have you guys get a perspective of what we're going through as small businesses. And then we're going to have a Q&A at the end. So we will start with a review of, and I'm not sure, Amy, if you've got your things available, but I will have the ability to share the screen there. So if you wanted to share your screen at any point in time, I am not going to introduce you, though I should, because we don't have time. But when you do pipe up, please introduce yourself and where you're from. So let's talk numbers. So anybody in the vendor group want to pipe up about numbers? Thank you, Amy. Don't speak all at once. Jessica.
I didn't put my hand up, teacher. Okay, so from Amy's lovely photo that she has made for everybody here. So numbers right now in orange, we're allowed to have 50 people inside for a reception, 50 people not exceeding 30% of the overall capacity if you're doing an indoor ceremony. And then outdoor is 100 for both ceremony and for a staffed venue. The numbers get a little bit smaller when you're doing things on a private property like a family farm or your backyard, and that's when it goes to your indoor numbers of 10 or outdoor numbers of 25. And for the most part, orange, yellow, and green are all the same. It doesn't make much of a difference once we're in orange. But when you look at the red, then it gets a little bit smaller, indoor being 5 and outdoor being 25 for when you're at a venue. And then when you're, or I guess for both outdoor, for both venue and private residence, and then ceremony, I guess you can still have 100 people outside if you're just doing a ceremony.
Well done, Jessica from Caradoc Sands. Anybody want to add things to that?
Just a change from the last meeting that we did. There is no cap on the 30% capacity for ceremonies at venues. So you can go, I know for Oakwood, our cap would be 67, and that's our 30%.
Okay, so give us a little bit of a scenario in that case.
So if you wanted to have your ceremony and reception indoors, you could have 67 people there for the ceremony, and then 17 people have to leave for the dinner. So 50 is still the maximum for a reception and meal, but you can have 30% capacity for the ceremony only.
Perfect. And if you don't mind, I'm going to put you on the spot, Kate, for a sec, because you had a great explanation of indoors and outdoors at Oakwood. of the two different ways you approach it. You said that last night. So if you kind of want to reiterate that.
Yeah, of course. So we are really lucky that we have our terrace room with an attached terrace deck. So if a group decides to only have 50 people at their wedding reception, then they're welcome to use the indoor and the outdoor space. It's considered one. But if they choose to have 100 people, and we have sourced a tent at this point to be able to do 100 people outside, then they cannot access inside at all. They are strictly outside. So once you do the 100, you cannot come inside unless there's an exit or washrooms. That's the only way you can come inside from an outdoor wedding.
Perfect.
And just to add to that, there's also very clear indications that you can't combine two spaces. So again, to reference the Oakwood, you couldn't have an outdoor event happening on the terrace and then an indoor event happening in the ballroom at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. We cannot add people because we've got the extended space.
Perfect.
I have a question that we've had ongoing, and I don't know if we've gotten an answer to it yet. Are we able to have multiple functions in a day? So perhaps a lunch at 1 o'clock, and we don't know the answer to that yet, Kate. So a lunch at
No.
1 and then a reception at 5 or 6.
No, it's a no. You can't split timing because it would mean generally the bride and groom and their family would still be in the second group. So we're not even able to, for our Easter dinner, have two separate spaces happening. They've known that.
Excellent. And this lovely graph from Unmistakably You and Amy is available on the Unmistakably You website, as well as the Facebook group. And if you want to go to our newsletter, Music Central's newsletter, you can find it there as well. Awesome. All right, so let's talk about ceremonies. So we touched on it a little bit, but ceremonies versus receptions and the capacity. So I really want to be clear with this because again, we're talking capacity versus numbers. So if somebody can kind of Cole's note this for me, because it is probably one of the most confusing parts of this as far as the numbers game. Anyone?
So the government has made a distinction between religious rites, so things like wedding ceremonies and funerals, and social events associated with. So the capacities are much larger for just the rite itself, for the ceremony itself. So you can have 100 people outdoors regardless at a ceremony only, but then you can't transition those people indoors. And at an indoor, as was mentioned before, you can have 30% of the capacity regardless. But again, you can't then transition that into a cocktail hour. So just the ceremony has those different numbers. And that's a little confusing if you're reading the legislation, but that is our understanding of what is meant by that.
So again, sorry, because it's confusing. I want to make sure everybody's clear on this, just to delve into it just a little bit. So I'm getting married and I want to rent the Budweiser Gardens. Capacities, humongous. Is there a capacity besides 30%? Can I have, if it's 15,000 people, can I have 5,000 people at my ceremony?
Technically you can, but do you want to? That's a lot of people, Rob. Do you know that many?
You are my special people. It wouldn't be intimate, but with a Music Central sound system, it would sound perfect. Well plugged in. All right. So yes. So technically, yes. So if it's a very large church, right? 400. Makes the EV 300 person church capacity. You've got 100 people, right?
So the thing with the capacity is that there still needs to be physical distancing. So if your capacity is 5,000, you still need to be able to put 6 feet between each of those people.
See, I'm flushing out these answers because it's confusing. So that's exactly what I was looking for. So thanks, Kate.
And I think that regardless, I mean, the numbers have been stated, but I think regardless, it's about keeping people safe and keeping people healthy. So it's not about finding the loophole. It's not about trying to cram in as many as you can fit. You know, I think ultimately everybody's goal is to have a safe and happy and memorable for positive reasons wedding day. So, you know, 100 people outside, yes, but it's 100 people with appropriate physical distancing still.
We can 100% agree on that one for sure. Okay. Anybody want to add anything else regarding numbers? And I don't want to lead people down the garden path here. So that's why I'm kind of hitting at this sort of as if I had no clue, which is actually true, but nonetheless.
If you're having your wedding in a backyard or someone's yard, your vendors count into your 25 people. So your servers, your caterer, your bartender, your photographer, DJ, officiant, all of those people count into your numbers at your 25-person wedding.
Okay. Yeah. And then a ceremony at a private residence is still 25? Right.
I'm not sure. I don't do a whole lot of private residence.
My understanding is that ceremony across the board, ceremony only is 100 people, even if it is at a private residence.
And
However,
that's outside.
if it's outside, yeah. But again, with social distance.
Cool. All right. Again, for our guests, if you have any questions, by all means, put them in the chat box, and I'll keep an eye on that and make
We
sure.
have a question
We have a question.
Yeah.
in the chat box from Laura.
So Laura, you can have 100 people outside for a cocktail hour if it's at a staffed venue, not if you're at a private venue.
Awesome. Keep those questions coming. All right. So then we touched on, or Kate at least touched on, private residence versus public, or, you know, or something like Oakwood or Caradoc or Nature's Oasis, which we're glad they're all aboard. So that is the big difference, that the government's really cutting down on those private parties.
Rob,
We
there is
have-
another question.
Yes.
All right.
Could we do 2 sittings of 50 inside? No.
No, you cannot. No. You can't split sittings between the day.
You can, so essentially how the government is looking at that is you could have like multiple events on the day, but no one can be the same. So if you're looking at doing separate like events on your wedding day, you, your parents, your bridal party, those would all be a constant. And you guys just hung out with like 40 other people, and then you're bringing in another 40 people. You are now, if anything happened with those first 40 people, you are now giving it to the next 40 people. So that's why there's no like double events on a single day.
Perfect. All right. Let's talk about food. So buffets versus family style versus food trucks versus et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So by all means, vendors, delve into that.
We
Emma?
haven't, sorry, just a follow-up question. What if the bridal party stayed with 1 sitting only, like friends and then family? The bride and groom would have to leave too for the second sitting.
Essentially, you wouldn't be able to see your next set of people because you were part of that first sitting.
Sorry, I answered that.
I
That's
was just
totally not
thinking,
even.
Erica, you're doing a fantastic job as our chat watcher. Now on our chat watcher. All right. Anything else as far as, how about food trucks?
So buffets are not allowed currently, plated meals only. I'm not sure since our last meeting, anyone's found out any more about family style serving and if it's allowed.
So family style serving is allowed. However, it's also under the assumption that everyone who's sitting at the table is within their like quote unquote bubble without actually being a bubble. It's essentially how the government, how Middlesex Health told me, was the people who are all sitting at a table together should be people who know each other and are able to breathe each other's air, quote unquote. So family style is allowed if that's the way that you need to do it.
And currently, with regard to those seating bubbles, the numbers change from orange to yellow to green. So currently, if we stay in orange, you can only seat 4 people per table. If we move to yellow, then you can go up to 6. And then with green, there are no restrictions.
So today in London, that actually changed for restaurants. I wonder if that's changing for us as well. Does anyone know?
So that was a fight that I had with my bar manager today, actually, because at one point in the framework, it says something along the lines that the moment food or beverage is served, that you change over to restaurant rules. So from my understanding from my last chat with the Middlesex Health Unit was if it's an event, it's an event, and you don't follow restaurant rules, even if food is being served. But she is very adamant in the sense that no, you switch over to restaurant rules once food's been served. But so can't clarify anything more than that, but that's the conversation I had today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think they said something that if you're in the same group, you could have more than 4 at a table, right? At a restaurant.
Thank you.
I believe Jody has a question.
Yeah, I'm just which I should know the answer to. I honestly just am not even playing in this arena because I feel like it fluctuates so much, and I'm giving advice that contradicts itself all the time. But my understanding still is, as an officiant, that you're allowed 100 people outdoors at a staffed venue, but as soon as you move into a private residence, you have to adhere to the gathering limits for private residents. It defaults over. So I'm just trying to get clarification. Now, I know that that was true in October 2020. I've just consulted a document, but I just want to see, because our frameworks have been shifting, if that has been amended. So just hang tight and I'll post a link when I find the most recent reference.
Awesome.
I haven't seen anything in the current, like Reg 364 doesn't make a distinction between ceremonies or religious rites on private property versus staffed venues. It would make sense to me that what you're saying is accurate, Jody, because it's harder to enforce the rules when there's no staff present. But anything that I've read has not made that distinction. But I currently I've read a lot of things, but I've probably missed some things here and there.
No, I think that I would default always to you, Amy, because you are so in the know, but I just want to get clarification because so many people are looking to do creative things with how they're situating their backyard weddings. So I'm just going to put my head back in that game of really trying to figure out where we are in orange right now because they're coming up. So thanks, Amy.
Perfect. All good things to bring up, right? Because we want to have as clear a picture for our folks as possible. No, we don't want to lead them astray. Kay, did we answer your question about the bridal party when sitting? We didn't. Make sure you type it in. Yes, awesome. All right, cool. So moving forward, washrooms. Steve, Nikki, maybe I think we talked about this last month, but maybe just obviously have to have more washrooms than normal for separation purposes.
For us anyway, we have to close people every second stall just to make sure there's still social distancing involved there. So it makes it tough. So if you do have the 100 people, you either need more washroom facilities or a little longer line, I guess. So you have to determine what you want there.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah. And I didn't want to gloss over this because again, we did it last month, but certainly if you've got any questions, by all means, ask away. We don't want to kind of not answer any of your important questions, but also the same, we'll direct you to the YouTube channel at Music Central, and our February talk is on there.
So Rob, I just looked it up because I have my handy dandy printout here. And it says no person shall attend a social gathering associated with a wedding, a funeral, a religious service, rite, or ceremony held at a place more than 10 if the gathering is indoors or 25 outdoors. So ceremonies are only 25 on private property.
Awesome. Thank you.
We have a question from Brianna. Oh, I'm sorry.
I was just about to say there's a question in the group, which Brianna, I like for like what we're doing at Caradoc, we are telling people if they need to have cupcakes for whatever reason, if it's like a favor or something, to package them up. You can get really cute cupcake boxes on Amazon, and essentially you would just package them up like the night before with your parents and your bridal party or whatever. And then you could have them at each setting for people to just have there. The thing with having food out is people can still like go over and look at it, and it's a whole icky situation where having it either at the setting so they can just either eat it at their table or then just like put it in their purse when they leave, or just entirely just don't have it, just so you aren't wasting your money on cupcakes. Cupcakes are becoming a big waste of money for couples, especially right now with COVID. It might just be, it would depend on your venue if you can serve them to the table. You would have to talk to them. But I know with us, it's easier to just have them in a cupcake box.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say is we have a couple of caterers who are willing to serve a dessert that doesn't come from them, but then others wouldn't be. So that's a conversation to have with your either your venue, your catering manager, or your catering company.
And I guess, and I don't want to speak for Jessica, Kate, or Nikki and Steve, but obviously, if I'm coming to a venue, I'm respecting the house rules, right? I'm in their house, I'm respecting all their rules. So because honestly, if stuff goes down, it's on your shoulders, right? It's on the venue's shoulders. So of course they want to be responsible and make sure that all the rules are followed and that they don't get in trouble. Because if they get shut down for 2 weeks, then maybe they lose a possible 2 weddings, and that hurts, 2 more weddings. So definitely understand that as a vendor coming into a venue, we have to respect their rules, and each of the venues might have slightly different rules. And at the same time, as a couple, you have to kind of do the same as the rules of that particular venue are the rules of that particular venue, and that's been their decision that they've made.
The really, really tough thing with venues right now is that anyone who has called the Stop the Spread business line or called the health unit or looked in anything, I clocked 4 hours last week trying to figure out if dancing is allowed. And what we've been told is that it's at our discretion, but it is also at the discretion of the person giving the fine. So if someone shows up to the event on the night of and decides that they're having a bad day and they're going to fine us, even if we fight the fine later in court, it still shuts down the night. So we have to walk a really fine line of making sure that your wedding's not going to get shut down, but also going to have a good time. So be patient with us. We're really trying.
It's really hard to establish rules when there's not a clear line that we can't cross. And so that's why it makes it so difficult.
Yeah.
It's not that we don't want you guys to have a good time. It's also the fact that we want to make sure everyone's safe. It's not like we're just being mean people. We're not trying to be. We want you guys to have a good time. We want you guys to be able to have the wedding that you've always dreamed. I'm coming from a place where I'm actually a bride for this year as well. I was supposed to get married last year. I'm now getting married this year, regardless of what's happening. So I am in the same boat as a lot of you guys. I feel you. I see you. It's just that we kind of have to do what we have to do.
We also have to take into account that if one wedding doesn't follow the rules and a fine comes, that closes us for a minimum of 2 weeks, which could mean multiple other weddings being put off. So it's just something to keep in mind when you're talking to your guests and helping them find loopholes, that it's not just your big day too.
And I will from my perspective, give an example of, I'm playing great music, blah, 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 blah. People are like starting to shimmy and then they're starting to dance. Now, there's nothing I love more than people dancing on the dance floor. But if the venue manager comes up and says, listen, Rob, can you just tone it down a little bit because, they're getting a little bit crazy. We don't want the dancing. I will respect that and bring that down a notch or two. Again, I'm respecting the house. All right. So I think we're good with that. I think speaking of dancing, that makes a nice transition because there's a lot of been questions about like, hey, we can't dance. How are we going to entertain our guests? What kind of experience are our guests going to have? So there's lots of forms of things that we can do as DJs and MCs to entertain, of course, with games and trivia and whatnot. But if we could maybe just do a quick round table of maybe some thoughts on other vendors to see if they've got some ideas and or what they've seen or what they've heard?
We had a comedian last season. We had a comedian, he actually came in from Manitoba. So he was awesome. He did an hour-long show. There's Peter Menny out of London. He's a family-friendly comedian and magician. So it's something that your grandma will enjoy and your friends. So that's something that I know of.
Perfect. Did the comedian from Manitoba say, I just flew in from Manitoba and boy, are my arms tired?
So it was a wedding. They were from Kettle and Stony Point. And so they flew him in. He was from a reserve in Manitoba. And so I got picked on a lot for being the only white person in the room, but he was really funny.
Awesome. Sorry, had to do the dad joke. Anybody else?
I've had weddings looking into like sketch artists and like caricature artists and stuff like that, like getting somebody who maybe like goes around to the table and like starts drawing people at the table and things like that. But the comedian or the magician have definitely been ones that I've suggested to a couple of my couples who have asked. Another great thing is if your venue has like a projector and a screen, setting up some sort of Jeopardy through your MC or your DJ, doing something fun. I also have a couple of weddings that are kind of doing like quote unquote like shower games. So we're like bundling a bunch of games to be sat at each place setting, and then the DJ is going to kind of like go through the different shower games, but that include both couples instead of just like a bridal shower kind of thing. There's so many different options out there.
Rob, can I pop something up here again?
You sure can. It's still open.
Okay. So
Sorry, Amy. Brianna, I think a roast of you and your fiance sounds like hilarious idea. I think you should do that. And I would like to come to your wedding just so I can witness how it goes.
So some of these, I mean, depending on your venue, I mean, and depending on the thing, lawn games are questionable because if you've got everybody touching the same beanbags, I mean, it depends on the lawn game. It depends on the venue. It depends. I mean, you're still supposed to stay in your bubble and keep distant from people outside. But a lot of these Jess mentioned, but you know, live entertainers, like there's a live painter from London who will actually like paint you and your partner or your guests in real time. She does a painting of your first dance on site, which is cool. You know, there's a fire guy. So if you're doing an outdoor reception and you want to bring in a fire eater guy, I mean, he's local, which is kind of cool. There are all kinds of, like Jess said, those like shower games or paper games like, you know, word searches or crosswords or cootie catchers, or you can put individual advice cards at everybody's place setting and have them put them in a jar for you, you know, or date night ideas. And lots of DJs are doing lots of amazing interactive, you know, trivia or music, like guess that tune kind of things. There are just so many things. If you're creative, there's a commercially available take on Cards Against Humanity that you can order that's called Cads Against Matrimony, which again could be fun depending on how you want to do things.
Perfect.
Rob, just heads up, Erin Woodgate is in. Oh no, you brought her in. Never mind, we're good.
On it.
Kate, somebody asked for the information of the person at your place.
Yeah. Peter.
That's Darcy. She's one of our brides, so I'm going to email it to her.
Perfect.
Yeah, Peter's great. Yeah, from our perspective, obviously, character artists and that kind of sort of individual where you kind of go off into a section obviously isn't servicing the entire crowd. It's more individualistic, but kind of if you want to entertain your crowd, you know, a comedian or a magician or a DJ kind of working the room doing trivia and things like that might be a little bit better. From our perspective, and we had a team meeting last night, kind of going through some of these things to kind of in preparation for this, where one of the guys came up with a Family Feud idea, where we could do a Family Feud and kind of work the tables against each other in a competitive way, and it really builds the energy up. And that's kind of one of the things you really want to do is kind of, because it's an experience, you want to entertain them. And if there's no dancing, then you kind of build that energy up with a little bit of competition. So trivia or Family Feud of some sort really works well table to table. Another thing that the guys came up with was, instead of just having a shoe game for just the bride and groom, get mom and dad involved, or get, pick on the tables and say, who's your volunteer couple, and then have them do it. And it really stretches that shoe game out more than the usual, 5 minutes or so. So there's certain things that we can do that, again, if you have a really good MC and kind of work the crowd and control the crowd, there can build a lot of energy. Anybody
A
else?
good MC is very, very important.
Which is another reason why you shouldn't just fire your DJ, even though you aren't dancing at your wedding. They are still going to do so much for your wedding on top of playing music and making sure you guys are having a good time with the ambiance.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I didn't even pay her for that.
But you guys can discuss payment after the meeting.
I'll give you I'll figure out what the commission is. I'll invoice you.
0.0001 Bitcoin, right there, on your way. All right, so that's entertainment experience. Again, if you want to have any other questions, by all means, we have a fantastic amount of vendors here that can answer all these questions. And Amy, you on your back catalog actually have some videos about this on your. Can you want to just quickly kind of do a little plug on that?
Sure. I do. I have a Facebook group called Wedding Planning Simplified, and I do a Facebook live video every Sunday at 1:00. So they're all archived on the page. A lot of the people in this group right now have been special guests, and we talk about everything from the nuts and bolts of planning a regular wedding to options for planning a COVID wedding to how to set yourself up for a great marriage and plan your marriage and not just your wedding. So the videos are all available. If you just join the Facebook group Wedding Planning Simplified, you're welcome to watch me look silly in all the thumbnails. I'm pretty sure there's somebody at Facebook whose entire job it is to pick the least flattering thumbnail and put that all over Facebook. So.
All right.
I think there is a way to change thumbnails.
Oh yeah, if you have any tech savvy at all, I'm sure it's not that hard, but.
All right. So just before we move on, quick, just from my perspective again, what I've been telling my couples is think of it like a house party. So they think, well, why would you have music at it if we can't do dancing? Well, music's huge as far as part of a soundtrack. And think of going to a house party and not having music, right? You're still bouncing around and doing some dancing, but you're not really technically dancing as you would know it. So music is hugely important, and that's my little plug for that. So think about that. And now we're going to move into the vendor sort of from their perspective, how they are working with COVID and the restrictions. And I think we'll just go from where I'm seeing you on the screen, and that would be Kate from Oakwood Resort.
Okay, so at Oakwood, we have purchased a tent, or are renting a tent. It's a tent situation, so that we can have 100 people outside, 6 feet apart. We're following every rule that we can. It sounds like in green, we will be allowed dancing with masks on outside. So I have a follow-up meeting with a couple more people on it. But we'll see how it goes, and we're just kind of taking it one bit at a time. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer them. You can send me a message in the chat or send me an email. Even if you're not getting married at Oakwood, I spend a lot of time trying to figure out these regulations, so I'm happy to help.
She's got books.
Books, stacks of them.
Books.
With tabs.
This organized. Awesome. All right.
Gotta love a good Post-it.
Next up, we have Nikki and Steve from Nature's Oasis.
Thank you, Rob. I guess we have COVID's been tough on everyone. One advantage that we have had is we've invested close to 100,000 in and improvements, being that we had no guests. We didn't have a lot of weddings last year. So it gave us a chance to do a bunch of renovations and preparation. So we've installed 5,000 square feet of interlocking stone for our tent. So we now have 3,000 square foot dance floor. So we can hopefully do a little bit more social distancing in that. We have also purchased a big tent, so that's good. And our washroom trailer is massive as well. So it's kind of put us in a good position for this. Allows us to be able to social distance and keep our couples as safe as possible. So, you know, if there is one advantage, that was it.
Awesome. Jess from Caradoc.
So we're lucky at Caradoc in the sense that we already had both an indoor venue space that can hold up to 140 people inside nicely on a typical wedding night. And then we also have our outdoor cottage venue that could host up to 100 people on a typical wedding under our structure. So inside for social distancing with only 50 people, we're able to give you lots of space between people. People feel really safe. We've had a couple of different events. We now have all of our golfers in, and they all really appreciate the fact that it's all being safe. As for our outdoor venue, we already had a tent that we had on site. And once we add that tent to the other side of our space, it kind of creates an entire big room that we can socially distance 100 people out there. And it's really nice. And the other nice thing is that our ceremony space at Caradoc is also outdoors. So for all of those indoor weddings that are wanting to still have 100 people for their ceremony, they're totally able to do that. It just means that they have to send 50 people home after the ceremony, which to each their own, if that's what they want to do. We are more than willing to accommodate that as well. And yeah, we're just really lucky in the sense that we already had the two spaces, which were kind of ready for COVID, it seemed like.
Looks like Jody from Something New Officiant is up next.
Thank you. So for us, we're busy ceremony writing. We're really fortunate in that in order for a wedding to take place, you need to have somebody who is licensed to perform weddings. So regardless of whether there are 5 people there, which for some weddings moving forward, we're still keeping quite snug to some lower numbers up to whatever the limits provide. And so like others, we've tried to find the sparkly moments to really look at ways to honor people who aren't able to gather because of the limits or because of other health related issues. They're just not safe enough to be in a crowded space. So it's been like flexing the creative juices to try and come up with really interesting and innovative ways to plan unique ceremonies. Thankfully, a lot of the work is able to be done, even rehearsals through Zoom or through other online platforms. And it has also been a really lovely time to launch our marriage preparation program because so many people have noticed that the relationships have needed some caretaking. They've been through a lot in the planning and then replanning and some now replanning that maybe it's time to focus on life after I do. And that we really wouldn't have had the time to pause and really think about that prior to the current situation that we're in. So we're excited. We're looking forward to an awesome year where we are way better equipped as vendors to show up and meet the needs. I think we're better able to identify the emotional needs of our clients and be much more reassuring than we were last year, where we were kind of clamoring around trying to find our footing ourselves. So yeah, that's it for us.
I kind of have an analogy about Space Mountain. You know, in March last year, we were going into Space Mountain and really not sure. We've never been there before. And so I'm going to do a little thing on Reels or something about the Space Mountain analogy. Next up, we have Amy from Unmistakably You.
So as a wedding planner, my entire reason for existence is to try to give our couples the wedding of their dreams. And so we are definitely feeling the struggle and the stress along with our couples. As I think is evident from our conversation here, there are so many different interpretations of the rules and so many people who are trying to, trying to find the loophole, but not maliciously, just because you want the wedding that you've always envisioned. And so we are very consciously trying to put people's safety first and foremost, and also be able to help people to have as close to the wedding that they have always dreamed of that they can. One of the things that is very much on my radar, because we do a lot of weddings on either private property or on lightly staffed venues. Some of our couples have moved to staffed venues where realistically they're allowed to have more people, but the staffing from the venue is minimal. So one of my big concerns is just the whole liability piece. And I have been explaining that to my clients a lot when I get requests like, well, can't I just hire you as my staff at my private property and then I can have 100 people because you're my staff? And so those are the kinds of things that, while I would love to be able to, pull all the strings and make things happen from a liability perspective as a small business, I'm not comfortable with. I mean, I have insurance, but I don't have that much insurance. And so, I'm really trying to find creative ways to make things work for people with the prime objective of keeping everybody safe, and just trying to be a knowledgeable resource, which is difficult because even the people at the hotlines aren't all that knowledgeable all the time. So yeah, I'm always here and open for questions if you want to reach out, but I definitely don't always have all the right answers. So
big heart though. And that's one of the things about this group, man, we have hearts of gold. And for our guests, just to understand that we are there for you. We want the absolute best experience for you. And we have a passion. We want to show up at your wedding and it be totally amazing. So never doubt that. So from the perspective of makeup and hair, Erica.
Oh goodness. Okay. I'm Erica and I'm from Blush and I do hair and makeup. The rules as of right now I can't do makeup. I can't do makeup until yellow. Hair is still okay. And again, it changes fairly regularly. So I just try and keep in touch and answer questions as I go. And every day is a new day. I do my best to work within the confines and follow the regulations, but right now it's very hard to see ahead and know whether in May I'm going to be able to do makeup. It could be, it could not be, and that's kind of, can you do eye? That is a great question. So somebody just messaged, can you do eye makeup? There are some artists that are offering eyes only makeup because the regulation states that you are not allowed to perform any services requiring the removal of a face mask. Myself personally, I do not offer half services. Should it come down to a situation where we are in yellow and we suddenly move to orange, I might consider doing that just so that a bride is not scrambling at the last minute trying to figure out what on earth to do. But I tend to follow the guides and regulations in the spirit of the guides and regulations. And if they are saying that you should not be performing services that require face masks to be removed, then I would not venture to do that. But that's my personal position, and you're going to find hair and makeup artists that will again, like many people, are just trying to navigate the regulations and do the best that they can to work within the confines and still make everybody happy and keep people safe. So yeah, I would always say talk to your particular stylist, because everybody is going to have different levels of comfort and how they want to be set up, whether they want to be kept separate from people, like the private residence getting ready. That's another one people are really trying to kind of navigate, because if you're getting ready at home with your bridesmaids and your mom and you've got a hair person and a makeup person, you are going to very quickly broach that threshold of how many people you're allowed to have in a private residence at once. So little things like that are things to keep in consideration as well. But yeah, no, we're plugging away and doing what we can. And we have a question, but
Yes.
it is,
What
yeah.
happened, Erica, the chat?
Yes, sorry for being off topic. No problem. I was rambling. We are having a barbecue at our wedding. Could we have our guests eat outside at the 100-person capacity, or because we are eating, does it force us to drop down to the 30%?
Is it on your property, the barbecue? If it is at a venue, then if you are outside and 6 feet apart, then it should be okay. I would definitely say follow up with your specific venue. It depends on their spacing and their capabilities. I can only speak to our venue, and having 100 people outside to eat in our tent is fine. The 30% capacity only applies to ceremonies indoors. I hope that was clear.
Lisa says, thank you.
Oh, good.
Following up, we have Kurt from Collins Clothiers.
Hey guys, thanks Rob. So what we're doing from a planning perspective, we're trying to make it as easy on our brides and grooms as possible. So we offer many different options to plan with us. You can do a virtual consultation, which has been tremendously successful. You can sit at home and we can show you all your different clothing options. But also we do in-store consultations as well, where we still allow you to come in and actually try everything on and see how it's going to look on you. From a safety standpoint, we do quarantine all the goods tried on for 72 hours. And if we can't do that, we dry clean everything. So when you do come in, you know you're safe, and we follow all the product protocols and make sure that you're not trying on something that somebody else has tried on. And we do offer this is different for our industry than everybody else. We do offer 100% refund up till 3 days before your event, so you can book with confidence. And we can specifically do that because we're a service and we own the inventory. It's not something that we're having to buy in and resell. So we're different than most venues. So we are able to accommodate you with 100% refund up to 3 days before your wedding. So you can book with confidence. And if at any time you need to cancel as a family business, we'll give you your money back.
Awesome. Thanks, Kurt. And I just wanted to also state, I did ask Aaron, but maybe at the last minute. So I'm going to try to get Aaron on to get the wedding dress perspective for next month's chat. Rosemary from Time for Flowers.
Rosemary has the easiest job I think, from all vendors. Mostly because I'm there to make you happy with your flowers and then I'm gone for the rest of the day. Sounds horrible, but I have the best job in the world.
That doesn't sound
so.
horrible.
I find my job pretty, what's that?
That doesn't sound horrible. I have the best job in the world. That does not sound horrible.
I know, no, that's not horrible. I know, horrible compared to all of you, I have to stay, no kidding. No, I find I also don't put a lot of time and effort into finding all the answers. Sorry, Amy and Kate and Rob and everybody else. Just from the point of view that I do consultations either through online or now again in person. And when I deliver, I pretty much stay at the door. I hand you all the goods. I tell you how to take care of it. And I wish you an amazing day. And I go back to my work. So for me, it's pretty easy. I don't know how other florists do it, but this is how I do it.
Thanks, Rosemary. Next up on my screen, I see Anne from the Wedding Ring.
Hi, everybody. I don't really have a whole lot to add. We are over one bridal show season and a long way away from the next one. We do, of course, still have the weddingring.ca planning tools and vendor reviews, articles, tips, and tricks. We just posted yesterday a feature on outdoor wedding venues in a variety of cities around the province. And tomorrow, A&B Party and Tent Rental has a little feature for us on the ins and outs of renting a tent for your wedding. Yeah, so from our perspective, we will keep doing our online stuff. We're hoping to have another magazine for you in September. We do, of course, have our digital edition of our January issue of the magazine. If you can stand a snow-covered cover of the magazine, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm all done looking at that cover right now just because of the snow that's on it. So we are hoping to have another magazine for you in September. It will really depend on the weddings this summer and if there's content available for it. It was a bit of a struggle getting weddings to feature in our magazine just because of how few there were in 2020. So we're working on a magazine, and we do have plans. We are full steam ahead with our fall bridal show schedule. Fingers crossed that everything works out and we are back to big groups by then. And you never know, there might be a little surprise pop out sometime in the spring, depending on restrictions and color zones and what kind of magic my fairy godmother can wave. So we'll keep you up to date.
Awesome. Thanks, Ann. And Aaron from Woodgate Photography.
Hello. So yeah, I also think that I have the greatest job in the world, Rosemary, because I get to be there right from getting ready all the way through till the last formality, which typically was always the bouquet and garter toss, which I think could still be something that, I don't know, maybe you can't distance to grab a bouquet and garter toss, but you can make it a really cute moment where you go and specifically give it to someone that you think either needs it, or you could give it to, I have one thing that I have seen in the past that's really sweet is give it like to your, older relative that it's, their 50th wedding anniversary. Anyway, all of those moments that I just love to capture. But yeah, and I guess just we stay 6 feet back as much as possible and wearing masks and all of that fun stuff. And I don't know if there's anything else to add from a photography standpoint. I just photographed a wedding on Friday actually, and it went really well with the photographs. So yeah.
Wonderful. Thanks, Aaron. And these certain elements of a day don't have to be necessarily eliminated because we can't get a crowd assembled. Bouquet toss, that sort of thing, girder toss. We can easily make a game out of that, right? You just think outside of the box and make a game and have some fun. And again, it builds that excitement, builds the energy in the room. And when you have little pockets of these entertainment areas, sets, if you will, don't pool them all together. Say, okay, we're going to do this. We'll have the comedian, for example, and then we're going to take a bit of a break, and then you explain to your guests, all right, in 20 minutes, we're going to be doing this. Super exciting. It's going to be so much fun. Make sure you stick around. And so you kind of give them a bit of an agenda or a menu so they have reasons to kind of look forward to it and stick around. So, but I would not at this point kind of pool all your entertainment into one little spot. I kind of stretch it out over the night. Makes the energy kind of continue. All right, so yeah, escape room, totally awesome. All right, so we're going to except for the Q&A at the very end, we're just going to take a few minutes and just be completely clear here. This group of vendors does get together every Tuesday night. It has done for a whole year now. We've been pretty tight knit, and so we do kind of cry in our beers, and I have allowed, and I think it's important for you as couples to understand from our perspective. So we're just take a couple minutes and kind of go through like small business sort of things, so you maybe can have hopefully a little bit of empathy from our side of what we're going through. So anybody want to kind of, in a sort of a non kind of bitching sort of way, as best you can, try to kind of illuminate our perspective.
I'll go first.
Sure.
So since COVID started, my department of 3 became a department of me. So in an average wedding weekend, I now clock in at about 120,000 steps. So your wedding coordinators are tired. So we are doing the best we can, and we try and email you back as quickly as we can. But just remember, things are a little bit slower this year, and we are doing our very best.
So patience.
Patience, please.
Amy.
I was just going to say that we very much understand where our couples are coming from in terms of wanting to postpone if that's the decision for them. But I would just advise you that if you're in that situation, just be very mindful of the fact that your vendors are actually still booking weddings for this year. At least we are in a smaller capacity, and every time you wait until the last minute to let a vendor know, it prevents us from potentially filling that spot with someone else. Not that we're trying to force you to make decisions when you're not ready to, but just be mindful of the fact that every Saturday is part of our inventory. And if we are still reserving that inventory for you when you know full well that you're going to be postponing, it's potentially preventing us from the revenue that we might be making that we're then going to lose when you postpone. And please, if you're postponing, tell your vendors before you post it on Facebook.
Amen, sister. All right, anybody else?
I think Kurt has something.
I can say something, Rob. No, just from a planning perspective, like normally for us, we would be buying inventory, receiving inventory, building our staff, building our team to prepare for the wedding season. Because, for us, we go from very, very little suits, January, February, March, April, and then May, it's crazy. June, it's even crazier, July, where, this is the first time since 1965 where we haven't ramped up our staff or receiving boxes every day, because we really don't know how many weddings we're going to do, right? So as fast as we book them, we get them postponed, which is okay. But, from a planning perspective, same thing as Amy said, as soon as you know, let us know, because we're trying to plan our inventory as best we can. And we're trying to keep our costs in line for you guys and keep the costs down. But our costs are accelerating and going up every day. And, we're maintaining our pricing as best we can. And I think a lot of venues are doing the same thing. Their costs are getting higher and higher and higher. Their losses are getting bigger and the revenue staying the same. So if you have to pay a little bit more for your venue or your flowers or your photographer, just have empathy for them, because they've lost a lot of money over the last 10 months. And, some way we got to get it all back, right?
Yeah. And I guess in reality, we are never getting that back.
No, but you got to try to, get something of it back, hopefully.
Yeah. Totally understand. Anybody else again, just from our perspective as small business owners to let them know. And again, I don't want to labor this, but
The only thing that I want to say is to be kind to your vendors as well. Like, we're human. We're just trying to do the best that we can, and we're trying to make your day the one that you want as much as we can. It's like I said earlier, we're not trying to be like, no, you can't do that. We're not trying to be bullies. We're human. We're just trying to follow the rules like you are. So just be kind to your vendors as well. If somebody doesn't have your date available and they need to keep your deposit, it is what it is at that point. You guys did sign a contract, and just respecting the contract that you guys signed and making sure that all of your vendors know what's up as well. Being transparent and being kind is really all that I can ask for.
And just to piggyback on the contract piece, before you start selling your deposits and your contracts, please check with your vendors that it is transferable. If it is not, and you have sold your contract to someone, it's going to be a big mess for you. So just make sure that it's something that they do and it's something that is in your contract. Most vendors have a non-transferable clause, so definitely look into that before you start posting on Facebook groups.
And talk to your vendors. Like, we're human beings, and we do understand and have empathy, and we will try to work with you. Like, nobody here, there's not a single person here, and I know most of these people very well, that are like, oh, let's be mean because it's the rules. No, like, we're all trying our very best to be accommodating and make you happy. So talk to us, ask questions, we'll work with you.
And bottom line is we have to follow the law, right? So try not to get upset when, you need to social distance or you can't dance in big groups, right? Bottom line, we have to follow the law.
And just being safe. Like, it's not just the law, it's being safe. You don't know if someone has a relative that lives with them that they need to keep safe or whatever.
Yeah.
And we all have families we have to go home to at the end of the day too.
And we have brides next weekend that we have to not cancel last minute on because we were exposed to anything the previous weekend. We have to take care of the other brides as well as this bride. Like, it cycles forward for us too.
yeah, it's a bigger picture.
Yeah.
100%. Anybody else before we switch to Q&A?
Well, if we're not safe, I think under most circumstances, if if, you know, one of us get COVID and have to shut down for 14 days, there's not a bunch of people to take over. So, you know, it's imperative that everyone does stay safe.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right. So Q&A. Thanks. Thanks, Darcel.
Thank you, Darcel.
Yes,
We need to hear
thank
that
you.
more.
I was looking at Erica waiting for okay.
I had to stop laughing long enough to read it.
Okay, all right. Okay. Anytime now.
No, anything, it's a little poop emoji like that.
Awesome. All right. Final segment is Q&A. So any final questions?
I actually have a question. I just thought I'd ask over here. It was easier than typing it out.
Yep.
So there's been a little bit of changes with the restrictions for restaurants. And I think we talked about this a little bit, where you can have up to 30% or 100 people, depending on making sure they're still 6 feet apart. So for example, I'm getting married at a golf course and there's a restaurant section and then there's also a banquet hall. So how is the government really deciphering between that restaurant piece that you could potentially have up to 100 people in, and then 10 feet away is the banquet hall and you can only have up to 50 people, depending obviously depending on the color code system. So just trying to see if anybody has any thoughts on that, or if we've heard anything more. I know that's something that just kind of came down the pipeline, so just was curious.
So for at least like I said, I kind of got into a little bit of a fight with my bar manager at Paradox today about it. For restaurants, you're looking at under the restaurant heading of the framework. And if you scroll down, there's actually like a meeting and event space heading, which is where receptions would be considered for. So receptions are considered a meeting or an event space, and restaurants are in its entirely different entity. So there are things that go over from restaurants to meeting event spaces, like no mingling, like you can't go from table to table, because you wouldn't do that if you were at Jack Astor's. You wouldn't just like randomly go up to a table next to you and just start talking to them. Maybe you would, I don't know. Some people might, I wouldn't unless I knew them. But they're essentially viewing it that way. So yeah, you have to kind of like scroll through the framework. It is the worst thing to scroll through. Trust me, we've all read it 1,000 times. Kate's probably just looking at it right now, flipping through all of her little books. But essentially, because there's the two headings, receptions fall under meeting and event spaces.
Thank you.
And there are blue highlights in there that were updated on March 20th in that restaurant section, but nothing has been updated in the events section at all. But I know there's lobbying happening right now with all levels of government for parity between the restaurant guidelines and the meeting and event guidelines. So who's to say what will come of that? But there are letters being written and emails being sent and parity being requested. So
I'm glad to hear that piece.
We're trying.
And it's
We're
coming
trying to
down.
wait.
I just want to jump in on that one. We do really, really hope that we're going to get the same kind of equal treatment, the 50% capacity up to 100 people, maybe more. I know some of the letters were asking for more than that. Realistically, if they say no, then the answer is simply because of the nature of our events. Weddings and family, friends, social gatherings don't typically have the same kind of stranger distance that you'd have to the table next to you in a restaurant. The nature of a wedding is that we're going to be dancing and hugging and kissing and loving each other. Whereas at a restaurant, you're not even talking to the people at the table next to you. So we do have to be understanding if we don't get the exemption, but send all your positive vibes that way, because we'd really love to see those numbers increase, both for us and for you.
And if you're kind of bored and you're looking for something to do, if you want to write a letter to your local member of parliament asking them for a more straightforward rules for weddings, we would really appreciate it, because we are lobbying on our end, but I think that everyone needs to.
Fantastic. All right. Quick question for our guests. If you could type in the chat section where you found out about this meeting. So if you could just take a minute and type that, where you found out about us. Could be from the newsletter, could be from one of the vendors. Perfect.
We're on Facebook, Brianna.
Perfect. All right. Cool.
I love it.
Next question is everybody on the wedding couple support group on Facebook? And if you're not, by all means, search that out. All right. So to finish things up, want to let you know that this recording has, or this chat has been recorded and will be available on YouTube. We will let you know via the wedding couple support group. And of course, the vendors will share it as well. We will have, because there was 11, Erica, that we are going to have a meeting or a chat next month. We're not sure of the date yet, but probably the 3rd or 4th Wednesday of the month of April. So look forward to that as well. Hopefully, if you want, one last thing, one last ask. First of all, definitely follow us on Instagram or whatever. We'd appreciate that. But if you have any comments of how we can make this better and for next month, by all means, definitely input that to either me personally or to the Facebook group, and we'll definitely try to improve this moving forward. So at this point, we'd like to thank the vendors for their amazingness, and you as our couples, thank you so much. Hope you got something out of this and it was useful, and we do 100% appreciate your time. And
I
thank
just put the link in the comments if anyone wants to join it.
What would we do without Erica? That's the question I ask pretty much every day.
Saint Erica.
Oh, please don't.
I already asked if I could hire her. I was first, people.
All right, we're going to stop recording, and thanks everybody. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
all.
you.
Yes. Sorry, I didn't